Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to make an orange dragon out of Primo Sculpey. Now I've made several dragons out of Polymer Clay before, but I haven't made any since I've started my YouTube channel. And last week my wife said to me, why don't you do a video of one of your dragons? And I thought, why don't I? So I went ahead and got all my supplies ready, and I'll take a sheet of foil and shape out the dragon's body and tail. And then I will cover that foil with some Primo orange. Now I did go ahead and condition this clay ahead of time to save a little bit of time in the video. But you want to just kind of condition your clay so it's nice and soft, and then you can go ahead and attach it or cover the foil with it. And it's, if it's nice and soft, it's really easy to smooth on more pieces of clay as you add them to get a nice uniform look to it, so it looks like it's just all one piece. I really want to try to avoid with when you have like a body and tail together like that you don't see any kind of seam lines or anything from when you've added more clay. And now I'll go ahead and do his hind legs. And so, like I said, I'm having him stand upright like a T-Rex. And so I'll go ahead and add his hind legs. Now this first set I thought were a little too big. So I'm going to go ahead and redo them and do them just a little bit smaller so they're not so wide. And then I just take the ball tool and kind of smooth out the back part of that leg there into the body. Just kind of help them stay on and give them a better look. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add indentions along the back and the tail so I can add some some spiky plates to the back of him. And then I'll go ahead and add a wire through them where the arms are going to be. The next thing I want to do is add the toes or the claws. So I'm going to do 3 on each foot. And then I'll just take a little ball tool and just do indentions in each foot on where I want these to be, and then just kind of push them in. I'll also go on the underside of them and smooth them in with that ball tool, just so they're just a little more durable. I've made several dragons in the past, and the toes are definitely the weakest part. You gotta kind of watch, make sure those didn't get caught on something and come off. The next thing I want to do is add some scales. Now I don't want to go ahead and cover the whole thing with scales, but I just want to do some groupings, like just do some groups of 3 or 2 or maybe just a single scale and some just different areas just to give that dragon that scaly look. To me, if you wanted to do a realistic dragon, you'd probably want to try to cover the entire thing with scales, which would take a lot more time. But, mine has that claymation cartoony look, so I think just a few scales on it will still, give me the look that I want and kind of represent that he has, a scaly exterior. And for each scale, I put it down and I just kind of smooth out the top of the scale to blend it with the body, but leave that bottom part, more, so it sticks out more and gives that scale look. Now the next thing I want to do is go ahead and add some pink, so I'm using Primo Blush, to his belly and underside area, and so that way I just kind of have like an accent color for the dragon. So I'm starting off and I just did a strip here. The first one was a little bit too wide, so I'm doing a strip here and I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of the little sections. I don't know what these are called, they're not really scales, but just so there's some division between them, so it's not just one big piece that I lay on there. Now when I was putting these on there, I thought they looked too uniform. I mean, they're kind of just rectangles, and I didn't think that was a very good look, so I went ahead and took them off, and I'll redo them and add, kind of round out the corners to them. Now this rounded out corner look is definitely more of what I was, going for initially. So, if something isn't turning out exactly how you want, go ahead and, give yourself a second chance and try it a different way. It will take up more time, but if you're happier with the end result, it's definitely worth it. So I'll go ahead and finish up his belly underside area. And now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and I will add some texture to that area. And if you noticed before, and I can't remember if I mentioned it, I did go ahead and texture the body with the ball tool just to make it a less uniform. So now I'm going to go ahead and add the spikes. So they're kind of like, like a Stegosaurus' spikes, where there's these just plates there. But one thing I noticed when I was adding them straight. I didn't like the way they looked. So I went ahead and started alternating them here. And I thought this gave it a little more desirable look. Because, it's a little more interesting than just having him go straight down his back. I know with characters like Godzilla and stuff, he'll have a straight layer, but then he'll have side layers. And I didn't have enough room to do that. So I just decided to do this alternating look of changing the angles of the plates on his back. And I was really happy with how that turned out. Alright, now that I'm going to go ahead and finish up these, the last thing I want to do to him is go ahead and add a wire to where I want to set his head. And that'll just help me put the head on the body when I do the next phase. And the last thing I need to do before I bake is I want to go ahead and make him some horns. Now it's time to bake our clay. Remember, always bake your clay according to package instructions. Now with the horns pre-baked, it'll make it a lot easier to add those to the head. And as you see, I went ahead and got some glass beads out, and I'll use those for the eyes. Now the next thing I want to do on him is go ahead and add his arms. And with pre-baking or baking the body, it makes it a lot easier to add more pieces to it without distorting what I've already sculpted on him. So with the arms, I just went ahead and cut 2 pieces of clay around the same size, and then I smooth those in with the ball tool so it'll attach to the pre-existing sculpture. Now the next thing I want to do is add some claws so the arms will match the back legs. And now these could be arms or front legs, but since he's standing on his back legs, I just call them arms. And then I just add those claws. I do the same thing where I use the ball tool to do indentions and then push them in. And then add, the texture onto the arms as I did the body with the ball tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut my horns. They're about the same size. So like you said, I just did them as one piece. And then I can use the X-Acto knife to cut them in half. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the head as I did the body. I just took a smaller piece of foil and now I'm covering that with the same orange clay. Now for the eyes, I'm going to go ahead and use the ball tool to do some indentions so I can push those glass beads in there. Now I don't know how well it shows up on the video, but you can see there's an opening on those glass beads where, like you'd use them for jewelry and run a thread through. And normally I try to hide those in the clay, and I will, but I don't need to yet because I'm going to go ahead and add these like eyelids to them, and those will cover up those holes in the glass beads. So I try to get my eyelids about the same size, but I did notice the dragon's left eye was sticking out a little bit farther, so I would have to make, put a little more clay there to kind of cover up that bead to try to make them as even as possible. You don't have to get them perfect. Most creatures, animals, things in nature are not perfect. That's something my wife always tells me when I get frustrated because I can't get something exactly how I want. I'm like, it doesn't look perfect. And she's like, things in nature aren't perfect. But anyway, kind of rambling here. But so I try to get them about as even as I can. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a mouth. For this one, I'm just going to do an indentation and kind of bring it up a little bit so it looks like he's smiling. Now for the horns, I'm adding 2 pieces of clay to the back of his head, and then I'll use a ball tool to add an indentation there so I can push those horns in there so that it looks like they're coming out and not just sitting on the surface there. Now I did go ahead and use some liquid clay to put into those spots to help the horns attach, so when it's baked they're a little bit sturdier. And I'll do the same thing when I add the head here. I added a little bit of liquid clay to that area as well. Now I'm going to go ahead, since I've got the head attached to the body, add a little bit of a texture with the ball tool. Now adding this texture isn't necessarily necessary, but I think it makes the dragon look a little more interesting if his head is not quite so smooth or his skin isn't quite so smooth. So the next thing I want to do is add his nostrils. So I'm going to take 2 little balls of clay about the same size, add them to where his nostrils would be, and then I just indent it with a small ball tool. Now the last thing I need to do with the orange clay is I want to add a few scales to his head. And so I thought his head looked a little too plain, so I'm going to go ahead and add just a few pieces of the blush clay on there, just to make it a little more interesting. I know I use that word a lot on him, but it's something where you could take a basic sculpture and add just a few touches, and it really will make the sculpture more interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and add a few scales to his arms. Now it's time to bake our clay. Remember, always bake your clay according to package instructions. And here is my finished orange dragon. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if it's obvious or not in the videos that I do, is when I'm switching colors, I do go ahead and clean it off my hand so you don't have that color transfer. I know some colors are worse than others as far as transferring that pigment across. And it's just something I edit out because it's not seen in the video. There's just a delay of when I start sculpting again. So that was just something I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of, and so they didn't start sculpting. I'm like, oh, I keep getting the colors on the other colors. So anyway, that's your pro tip from Andrew's Clay Creations and more. But I hope you enjoyed this video of me making this little orange dragon. And if you have ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments down below. And remember, never stop creating. Bye!